They mocked the janitor at the charity gala, but the Billionaire CEO pulled out a ring, a broken bar, and proposed. The chandeliers glittered like captured stars above the vast ballroom, their light falling upon gowns worth fortunes and tuxedos tailored to perfection. Guests mingled with glasses of champagne, their laughter a mix of self-importance and idle cruelty. In the corner, dressed in his faded gray uniform, Ethan Cole pushed his mop across the marble floor. His movements were quiet, careful, almost invisible, though not invisible enough to escape mockery. A young socialite lifted her gown as if his presence might stain it and said loudly enough for others to hear, "Careful, don't splash the mop water on my dress." Her companion laughed into his flute, adding, "Imagine him at the dinner's table, what a sight that would be." Their words cut like knives, but Ethan kept his head down. He had grown used to being the object of mockery, both in youth and adulthood, but it never stopped stinging. He had once dreamed of designing sustainable homes for the poor, but those dreams were buried under hospital bills and the loss of his father. Now he swept up after the wealthy, invisible yet always present. What the glittering crowd did not know was that Ethan's eyes were not on them at all. His gaze often drifted toward the woman who commanded every room she entered. Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Enterprises, a billionaire known as much for her philanthropy as her empire. Draped in a gown of midnight silk, she stood in the center of the ballroom giving a speech about schools being built in forgotten towns. She held herself with grace and power, her voice clear, her gestures deliberate. To the crowd she was a symbol of untouchable success, but when her eyes briefly flickered toward Ethan, her lips curved into a private smile. For one heartbeat, it belonged only to him, and his pulse faltered at the weight of her unspoken affection. None of the guests could have imagined the drama that the woman they admired, feared, and envied shared her heart not with another titan of industry but with the janitor whose mop they mocked. Their story had begun months earlier on a rainy evening when her luxury car broke down near the service lot of the corporate tower. He had offered her his umbrella, had knelt in the rain to check her tires, had helped her start the stubborn engine with calloused hands. He did not know her name, did not care that her heels cost more than his monthly rent. He saw only a stranded woman in need of kindness, and she saw in him the rare sincerity that wealth could not purchase. Later, when she discovered he was a janitor, she might have pulled away, but she did not. Instead, she sought him out in quiet hallways and storage rooms, in simple conversations where laughter and honesty mattered more than power or titles. Against every expectation, they fell into something real. The gala, however, was no place for quiet affection. Guests ridiculed him openly, their disdain unchecked. A young banker shook his head as Ethan passed with his mop and whispered loudly, "How does she allow him to ruin the view of the ballroom?" Another added with a smirk, "Perhaps he thinks he belongs here." Their laughter pricked at Ethan's composure. His cheeks flushed with shame. He wanted to disappear, to vanish into the walls like the dust he swept away. Then, before he could retreat, Victoria herself walked directly to him. The room stilled at the sound of her heels. Eyes followed her as she approached the janitor. "Everything all right, Ethan?" she asked softly. Her voice was gentle, entirely unlike the polished steel of her public speeches. He lowered his head, whispering, "Yes, ma'am." She smiled faintly, her fingers brushing against his hand for the briefest moment. The ballroom erupted in whispers, confusion rippling like a wave. Why would she speak to him? Why would she touch him? Later, when she returned to the stage for the closing address, the guests expected only words of gratitude and another announcement of her generosity. Instead, her voice carried a new weight. "Charity," she said slowly, "is not just about money. It is about dignity. It is about recognizing worth where the world refuses to see it." The room grew quiet. Some exchanged uneasy glances. "There are people among us," she continued, "who embody more strength and kindness in a single day than some of us show in a lifetime. And yet, society chooses not to see them." Murmurs spread through the crowd. They knew whom she meant. Her gaze swept the room before resting firmly on Ethan. Her hand rose, beckoning him. "Ethan Cole," she said clearly, "would you join me?" The ballroom froze. Gasps broke through the silence as Ethan stood frozen in place, mop still in hand. To invite a janitor onto the stage was unthinkable. The crowd buzzed with shock, some scoffing, others smirking in disbelief. Ethan's legs felt heavy as stone, but Victoria's eyes held him steady. Slowly, he stepped forward, each stride echoing against marble, until he stood at her side beneath the brilliant lights. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her hand slipping into his. "You laugh at what you do not understand. But I know this man. I know his kindness, his honesty, his strength." Her words were both a defense and a declaration. Whispers grew louder. Some sneered, some muttered their disapproval. And then she did what no one could have imagined. She reached into her clutch, pulled out the small velvet box, and knelt before him on one knee. The room erupted into a collective gasp. A billionaire CEO kneeling before a janitor. Phones lifted, flashes sparked, some guests nearly dropped their glasses in shock. "Ethan Cole," she said, her voice unwavering, "you have given me a love that the world cannot measure. You have shown me what it means to be seen for who I truly am, not for what I own. And so tonight, before the people who could never imagine this, I ask you a broken bar, will you marry me?" Silence followed. A silence so heavy that Ethan could hear the thunder of his own heartbeat. Every fear, every insecurity screamed at him. He was not worthy. He was not rich. He was not what the world expected. But then he looked into her eyes. Those eyes that had always seen him when no one else ever did. The doubts fell away, replaced with a trembling certainty. "Yes," he whispered. Then louder, with every ounce of courage. "Yes." The crowd exploded. Some applauded wildly. Some shook their heads in disbelief, others whispered furiously. But none of it mattered. Victoria slipped the ring onto his calloused hand and rose, pulling him into a kiss that silenced every voice around them. For Ethan, time stopped. In the glow of chandeliers, surrounded by gasps and applause, he was no longer the janitor mocked in the shadows. He was a man loved openly by the woman who had chosen him. His spine straightened, his chest lifted, and for the first time in years he felt seen, not as invisible labor but as someone worthy of love. Victoria's hand gripped his tightly as if to tell the world she would never let go. Around them, reactions fractured. Some socialites stormed out, muttering about disgrace and reputations tarnished. Others stood stunned, reconsidering everything they thought they knew about status and love. And a few, quietly, felt something stir deep within them, a realization that perhaps love was not measured by titles or fortunes but by sincerity and kindness. As the night drew to a close, Ethan and Victoria walked together out of the ballroom, the eyes of the city's elite burning holes in their backs. Yet neither of them looked down. They walked side by side, her midnight gown brushing the marble, his gray uniform carrying the stains of labor and humility. But in that moment, they were equals, bound not by wealth or class but by something far stronger. And though the world outside would talk, mock, and speculate, Ethan knew that his life had forever changed. He was no longer just a janitor mocked in corners. He was the man she had chosen, the man she had proposed to in front of everyone who doubted him. For the first time, he felt taller than every chandelier, brighter than every diamond in that room. He felt whole, and that was worth more than all the wealth glittering in that ballroom.